So let's talk about the midterm. What do I want from you? I'm going to be giving you, right, a midterm that is, meant to be done online, right? And I would like for you to complete that by the end of fall break, right? So Monday the 13th. I think it's the 13th. Yes, 13th. Got my handy dandy calendar up there. So what's going to be in the midterm? Well, up to and including No Exit. The Martin Esslin and the beginning of the Theater of the Absurd is not going to be on the midterm. So, that is not going to be something that you're going to have to read real quick and then be able to put onto the midterm. But, right, continue reading it, continue looking at it. It's still important, right? What the midterm is going to cover, basics, right, of what we have looked at so far. If you are familiar and have paid attention to and gone through discussions and posts and everything like that about the existentialism, both Christian and atheistic, you'll have a little bit to sort of fill in right there. You'll have a little bit to sort of describe, what are the, stages of life and how does Kierkegaard see things a little bit differently than Sartre, perhaps, right? We will look a little bit at some of our interpretation of the way that characters act and react in both the plague and in No Exit, right? Those are going to be important. We'll talk a tiny bit about the myth of Sisyphus and what it sort of means. The majority of what you're going to be doing, though, is making sure that you understand the basics, right? But if somebody asks you, right, what is one of the basic tenets of existentialism, that you're able to say, right, that, existence precedes essence, right, that you can talk about what that kind of means. Now, if you've already done some of these discussion posts, then you've already done a lot of that work, right? You know that exactly what you want to say. And so, again, do those discussion posts. Go back and look, right? Go back and look what other people are saying. I think it's important to both, look at what you are saying about this, look back through your own notes, and look at what other people have put in the discussion posts. I think that's going to be important. But your midterm, right, is going to be due by that Monday after break. If it is not done by the end of that day on Monday, then I will need to take points off, right? There's just no way about it, right? This needs to be done because we need to be able to move forward, right? As well, you are going to be giving me, right, your topic for your final paper, project, etc., right? I will post a slightly longer video about that, next week, sort of to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. But by the time you're done with break as well, you should have considered, right, the way that you sort of want to talk through your final project, your final paper, however you're planning to do it. And I'll give you a couple of additional options, right, when it comes to, formats and ways of doing this, right? So, but that is going to be the most important thing, right? Be prepared for the midterm. Be prepared to do it. You do not need to do it all at once necessarily, right? I believe that you can save and come back, but do make sure, right, that when you are doing this, that you have whatever notes you need, that you're ready to to do this, and that you have some ideas, right, about what you're doing. I am largely grading this based on, right, the content and the quality of your answers. I am not going to be looking as carefully at grammatical things and but I do want you to be mindful of the fact that when we get to our projects, our papers, I would like something that's presented in a format that is, generally speaking, well written, grammatically correct. I understand that we are going to have some differences of opinions sometimes on the way that we say things, but do your very best to make sure that this is a paper that you are proud of, a project that you were proud of, right? Do not just throw this thing together. Think now about what you want your paper project to be later on, right? Do not come into it with, I'll throw something together really quickly, right? It does not work well. So, do that and you will have a great semester. If you start now preparing and you start meeting those deadlines, right? Doing this, right? Choosing your project, choosing, and figuring out your enhanced outline and your, early drafts, then getting to your rough draft right before the end of the semester, then it means by the time you get to turning in your final paper, you will only have minor revisions based on the comments that I'm going to make on those papers, right? Um, um, when it comes to how you're generating your ideas, again, right? Generate your ideas as best you can on your own, right? Do what you can. If you need to ask, right, about what should I do my paper on, you got two options, right? Talk to me, right? We're going to be meeting at some point during the semester anyway, so ask me what you ask me what I think, right? My questions to you will almost always be, what interests you? Why did you want to take this class in the first place? That contains, in many cases, an idea of a grain of what your final paper probably is going to be, right? What did you want to get out of this class, and what are you getting out of this class? Is this something that you want to think about your own existence? Is this something where you really like literature and you're really excited to, lay these ideas on top of a book or a thing that we've looked at, right? At minimum, remember that your paper has to include references to absurdism, existentialism, either or, both perfectly fine, but that it needs to talk about those philosophies. That is a non-negotiable. Do you need to talk about the other books that we are looking at? I would certainly like you to reference at least one of the pieces of literature that we've looked at that is not just the philosophical, right? So something outside of, the myth of Sisyphus, existentialism and humanism, and, the things we looked at with Kierkegaard. I'd like you to reference at least, right, The Plague, No Exit, right, Endgame, the stuff by UNESCO, the stuff we're looking at with Genet. At least reference one of those things. It does not have to be your primary source, but it should tie in some way with some of the other work that we've done. So, yeah, there you go.